back on the SportsMax zone now ahead of the second leg of the CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinal between Mexico and Honduras. The Honduran FA has been sanctioned due to actions from their fans during their surprise 2-0 first leg win on Saturday. At the sound of the final whistle, Mexico head coach Javier Aguirre headed over to shake the hand of Honduras head coach Ronaldo Rado, and he was struck by a full can of beer, causing lacerations to his head. Here's a look at it as he walks across. Yeah, bang. And there was blood, of course, following that incident. All right, now, the Mexican Football Federation, of course, released this statement. Let's have a look at that now. This behavior has no place in our game. We demand that CONCACAF take immediate and decisive action to address the matter. Football has to be played, but not a battlefield. And of course, there was a response from the Honduran FA as well, but with a slight twist. They say the FHH regrets the isolated actions of a small group of fans. We categorically reject the words, obnoxious gestures and provocative attitudes on the part of the coach of the Mexican national team, who insulted and provoked the Honduran fans from the beginning of the match. So much to unpack in this situation. And we are to be speaking with Juan Rango. Hopefully we'll touch base with him shortly. But Lance and Mariah, I must admit that the first time I saw this, before we even get into the sanctions, of course, there's a one-match no-fans ban for Honduras. So the next time they play a home game, they will do so without fans in the stands. But the first thing that struck me, Lance and Mariah, and I want to have a look at the incident again, was the reaction of the coach on the field. When he got struck, he never seemed alarmed by the incident. And in fact, in the post-match press conference, when he was asked about it, his response was, well, it's football, which I found quite curious as to why he would not be more alarmed by an incident like this. One, in the moment, and secondly, subsequent to it.
I think it speaks to the history, the deep, wretched history between these two teams. And could remember, coach is a fairly new coach with his team. His team lost, right? And many a times I find that, some coaches, and maybe this coach has a different style, they use the things that are happening off the pitch to, of course, turn the attention from the poor results that they have. And I felt like this particular coach in the instant, knowing the history of the two teams, didn't want to make it about himself. The result was already bad. Honduras had won, they would have been walking away with all 3 points. And I felt in that moment, coach felt like, okay, I understand the situation. This is something that happens between these two teams. It's been happening for quite some time. I don't want to go out there now and make an issue. And that's where I think he went with this. All right, I think we have Juan Rango. Juan, let's get your thoughts on this situation and start right there. What did you make of the initial reaction of the Mexican coach and his reaction as well in the post-match press conference saying, well, it's just football?
Well, it's him trying to, first of all, bring things down, because it was also announced that CONCACAF opened up a dossier on him in terms of his attitude. And yeah, he was being, quote unquote, provocative. He's always been a provocative coach. I mean, if you look at what he's been able to do, Javier Aguirre, what he's been able to do, this is this third time around with the Mexican national team. So let's keep that in mind first and foremost. He's always been a provocative coach, whether it's been coaching the Mexican national team, whether it's coaching Osasuna, coaching Mallorca, who he recently coached just about a year or so ago from preventing relegation, and also when he was at Atletico Madrid. So keeping all that in mind, yeah, he is a provocative coach. And the Honduran Federation is well aware of the situation, but there's other things that one has to start thinking about, because how can you allow, first of all, they don't sell canned beer in the stadium. How do you allow those items to come into a stadium where a World Cup qualifier or any match of that nature, knowing that those can become projectiles? Number one, the safety issues that have occurred there, number one. Number two, and also there is a back and forth between Honduran and Mexican fans, but also there's also been issues with Mexican fans in Mexico, and not much has been done as well. There haven't been situations with the homophobic slurs, with everything that's gone on there, that they've been able to even acquire any inkling of a suspension. So I mean, I'm not condoning what happened. I'm just saying that it's kind of a two-way street in terms of how the powers that be at CONCACAF end up treating Honduras, and then how they've consistently kind of let Mexico get away with certain things with maybe a very small fine and things of that nature.
Yeah, based on what you've just said, Juan, does it make any sense to ask you whether the punishment for Honduras is strong enough?
No. They got away with a good one. I mean, one match. I mean, and you'd have to think about when maybe it'll be in March, maybe it'll be qualifiers leading up to the World Cup, maybe it's a qualifier leading into Gold Cup. Who knows what that match will be? But one match for a situation like this, and as graphic, as obvious as it was, I'm not saying that it was something minor, mind you. I'm saying that it's something very serious. You see that a coach ends up getting cut, that he ends up getting lacerated severely. And of course, he's able to shrug it off. As a player, he got injuries that were much worse than that, and he kind of like shrugged it off. Thus his reputation, Javier Aguirre, as a player. But he knew what was going on. He knew where he was going, and he understood that. Well, if I end up getting hit, no problem. That's okay. I can go about business. And he knew what he was getting himself into first and foremost. And to end up seeing the situation kind of degrade to the sense that, to the kind of level that it did. Well, you end up knowing that there's something really, that's going to be very. And even today, prior to the matchup in the return leg in Toluca, he was also he's like, whoa, Mexico's going to be perfect today. Mexico's going to be this. So there was a lot of egging on in terms of that's concerned. Now, in terms of the reaction of the fans, yeah, it's completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and before you joined us, I was talking to Ricardo about that deep-rooted rivalry between the two teams, to the point where, it's as if it might never go away. It goes on and on and on, where today we're even discussing a coach being stoned with a can of beer and, of course, bleeding. From the time that you have covered these two teams, has there been situations, similar or even worse to this one?
No. To this level, no. I mean, how should I say this? On one side, they consider it a rivalry. On the other, they consider it a hammer hitting a nail. It's not a rivalry. They consider it, well, okay, it's another team in CONCACAF. Of course, I'm talking. There is a very, and maybe one starts talking a little bit outside of football and start talking about other aspects of social political issues and things like where Central American teams look at Mexico differently and vice versa. Mexico looks at themselves as more as the powerhouse, the North American end, and they're saying, no, you're one of us. That kind of attitude in terms of Central America. And in football, of course, the rivalry gets a little bit more intense, if you want to call it that. But knowing how the result came out and knowing what's at stake, not only for Honduras, but also for Mexico, because if Mexico don't qualify into the semifinals of a Nations League with a new coach, then things are going to get much worse for the Mexican FA, which find themselves still in the midst of a crisis because they haven't been able to figure out things in terms of what's going on between the lines, not what ends up occurring outside of those lines.
Yeah, you know what amazes me sometimes in these stories, Juan, is the position that we get from the two sides on, opposite sides of the fence, because I see the Honduras Federation statement, and for them to suggest that they didn't think their fans' behavior was obnoxious is ridiculous. I know they're trying to put their position out there and put some of the blame on Aguirre's provocative behavior, but you have to accept yours as well. And it is appalling to me that the Honduras Federation would say, would put a statement out to suggest that it's not that their fans were obnoxious. Something like that can't happen, and you would not, condemn it in the fullest sense. No,
you're right. But that's just the way things are.
But it shouldn't be, Juan. It shouldn't be.
No, it's not. But you know what ends up happening here is that it's not even applicable to Honduras and Mexico anymore. You see it a lot in South America too, where someone makes Efrain Juarez, a former Mexican international the other day, he's a coach in Colombia. he ends up kind of celebrating a little bit too effusively. He ends up getting arrested by the police because he provoked the fans at the stadium in a Colombian Cup semifinal. So does that justify you in as a fan to respond the way? No, it doesn't. It doesn't really. But everything is looked at in very high and very intense situations as a provocation. And then that ends up being kind of a thin line in terms of what is and what isn't anymore. I mean, for me, it's, hey, you know what, suck it up and play on. But for people now, it ends up being unfortunate, the reaction. Every look, every gesture, you kiss the badge on your jersey, you end up looking someone the wrong way. It's a provocation. And again, that word ends up being thrown around in Central America and in CONCACAF region, in South America as well, very loosely in terms of what is a provocation and what is not. And again, I don't want to get too into the social aspect of it all, but there's a lot of it that has to deal with it in terms of what is considered that and what is not considered that anymore.
Yeah, we would need a 24-hour show to discuss all of that. Juan Giarango, in 5 seconds, though, do you think Mexico can turn it around tonight? I guess
Time's
that's
up.
a no. Juan Giarango.
I'll tell you, they got a much better chance than Jamaica ever would have last night.
That was a low blow, boy. Take care,
Oh,
Juan.
no. It's the truth.
Have a good day, Juan. Let's
Take
go
care.
to break.
Bye-bye.
We'll be back.